Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just did some spring overreactions from the ACC again, got through some teams there, but now let's get into a Spotlight Wednesday, and it's one you've all been waiting for. It's the team that needs a title more than anyone else in the entire country this upcoming year, the Ohio State Buckeyes, and it's going to be a very, very interesting year for them. I think everyone understands how much pressure is on this team after the year they put up last year in the last couple of years, losing to Michigan and not being the team that they usually are. So let's start to break this down and let's get into specifically, let's do this the way that we normally do: offense, defense, schedule, and then some final thoughts. But I do want to touch on Ryan Day a little bit because this is the most pressured individual in the entire country. Bar none, there is no question in my mind. This dude is under more pressure than I can even imagine. Now, they've done a lot of really good things, and we'll start on the offense to kind of give you an idea of what they're working with this year. The wide receivers are out of this world. They usually are at Ohio State. That is the Captain Obvious statement of the day, but they're going to be incredible this year. Emeka Egbuka is leading the way there. You have Carnell Tate, Brennan Ennis are two guys that are ready to take those big-time steps forward. And then you have Jeremiah Smith. He was the story of the spring. Honestly, might just be their wide receiver one as a freshman this upcoming year because the kid is just ridiculous. He does stuff on a football field that I have literally never seen. So he's going to be fascinating to watch. Then you go over to the running backs, and it doesn't get much worse by any means. Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins is almost unfair as a running back duo. They both, in my mind, are top 5 or 6 running backs in the entire country. Both are going to be total game changers for this team. Don't necessarily have a ton of depth at that position, but when you're Ohio State, you're going to have dudes that can play. There's no two ways about that, whether it's a freshman coming in or just a young guy that hasn't seen the field a lot. But these guys staying healthy is going to be super important for them. The O-line is one that is better than it was a year ago. That is for sure. It was definitely one of those worry spots a year ago. Josh Simmons was a transfer from San Diego State that just never quite got his footing, played some good football from time to time, but didn't play quite as consistently as you would have liked as an Ohio State fan. Well, he's back, and I think he's made a lot of big-time strides. Donovan Jackson is one of the best guards in the entire country. Not worried about him one bit. Josh Fryer has been there for quite some time and is going to be really, really solid. Seth McLaughlin is the infamous center from Bama that did not have the year that he wanted a year ago, and the last time we saw him, it was not necessarily the greatest thing in the world, but is a very good center and definitely will play a big part for this team. Hopefully, he can fix some of those problems he had a year ago with Jalen Milroe and get back on the right track. And then you have Luke Montgomery at right tackle, who is a little bit of an unknown, a little bit younger of a player, but overall a really good group. They do need to be towards the top in the country to do what they want to do this upcoming season, but have a lot of really, really good players there. And I'm not necessarily worried about that group nearly as much as I was a year ago, or honestly as much as I was even a couple of months ago. Now, quarterback is the position that everyone's talking about. Obviously, you bring in Will Howard, and I think he's a really good quarterback. He won the Big 12 while he was at Kansas State. Obviously, has played a lot of really good football in his past, but there is a big question mark there. I don't think there's any question about that. There's definitely some curiosity going on because when you look at the playoff quarterbacks that have won titles, it's usually game changers. Now, last season, Michigan kind of offset that. J.J. McCarthy was not asked to necessarily be the big-time game changer that some of the other quarterbacks in the past have been asked to be. Maybe that's the path to victory for Ohio State. Maybe that's the way that they go about business. But Will Howard, that guy right there, is as important of a player as there is in the country. If he doesn't hit, you might go to Devin Brown, but if Devin Brown hasn't taken the job by now, I don't necessarily think they want him on the field for them. Not necessarily saying that he's terrible by any means, but I think if there was a reality where Devin Brown was going to be the starting quarterback, he probably would be right now. But let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. They're led by that guy right there in Denzel Burke and that guy right there in Caleb Downs. But let's start up front and let's talk about the interior defensive line. Ty Hamilton and Talik Williams are two of the best, one of the best duos in the entire country. One of the ones that they might be giving up a little bit of ground to is that team up north for them, Michigan, because when you talk about Mason Graham and you talk about Kenneth Grant, there's no one better than them. But this duo is right behind them. This is a elite group that is definitely going to be very stout against the run. Then you have JTT, you have Jack Sawyer coming off the edge. That's just going to be outright mean to some offensive tackles out there. They're going to tear offensive linemen to pieces this upcoming year. And then you have Edric Houston coming in as a freshman as an edge rusher. Could be a big-time player right away for them as well. So an elite front line for them. You get back to the linebackers. This might be the weak part of this defense, but it's not necessarily weak by any means. You have Cody Simon, who's a very experienced graduate player there. Then you have Sonny Styles, a very, very fundamentally sound player that's also incredibly athletic. CJ Hicks will be kind of a rotating player that could be a breakout star for them. So although linebacker is the place that you might be able to exploit with this team, you're not going to be able to do too much on it. The DB room is where the show is. Definitely led by that guy right there. When you talk about this group, Denzel Burke, Davison Igbinosun, all of those guys are huge for this team. The corners are just insane. Right behind them, you have Jermaine Matthews Jr., you have Calvin Simpson-Hunt. All of those guys are going to be incredible players, and it's going to be nearly impossible to pass on those people. And if it wasn't hard enough, you add in Caleb Downs from Alabama, who, by my estimation, is one of, if not the best player in the entire country. Lathan Ransom, Jordan Hancock on the back end, Lorenzo Styles rotating in. This DB room is insane. It is the best in the country, and I hate saying this, but it's not even close. I hate the people that do the not even close thing, but this one might not even be close. This is a remarkable group from top to bottom. They have guys in the back end. They can sustain injuries. A lot of stuff could happen to this group, and they're still going to be awesome. So that kind of gives you an idea of how good this defense is going to be. It's going to be insane. They have depth. They have top-end talent. They have experience. They have young players that are ready to step up. Everything is in place for this team, and not only are they going to be at the very least top 10 in the country, they could very well be the best defense in the entire nation. But let's start to break down their schedule and see what they're up against this upcoming year, and it's very manageable. When you're talking about Ohio State's world, it is very manageable. Usually their schedules in the past have had two big-time inflection points, right? They've had Penn State and they've had Michigan. Now they have three. You have at Oregon, you have Michigan, and you have Penn State. And funny enough, the new one might be the most important of the group. When you talk about that Oregon game, those are the two teams that you're looking at saying, those are probably the teams that I expect to be in Indy as of right now. If I were to make a pick, that would be my pick. Now, I am very far from making a pick on that, but just in general, those are the two teams that I'm watching the most. So that might be one of the, well, Michigan is the biggest game. I don't want to say that that's not the biggest game, but when you talk about, a team that you really want to beat, assert your dominance in the conference over, Oregon's definitely a team that Ohio State is circling for sure. Then you have the Iowa game in between Michigan State and at Oregon. That's a little bit sketchy. We know that Iowa is going to be a really good defense. We know that Phil Parker is going to have them ready to go. And if the offense can come along even a little bit, it could be a little bit of a rock fight on October 5th. Could get a little bit interesting up there in Columbus, but overall, they should be able to handle that. It'll just be one of those games definitely to watch a little bit closer. Nebraska and then at Penn State is a very tricky 2-week stretch there where you play a Nebraska team that a lot of people are kind of laughing at right now. They're kind of writing off because they are Nebraska and they've done some of the things they have done over the last decade, but this is going to be a lot better of a team than people are giving it credit for, and it's going to give them a little bit more of a fight, and then going straight to Happy Valley to play a game is not necessarily the easiest thing in the world. So Ohio State better have their head on right, better be ready to go for those games, because one could sneak in and just beat them outright. So it'll be fascinating to watch that. You have Purdue at Northwestern Indiana. All of those should be 20-point wins. No disrespect to those teams, but as of right now, there shouldn't much be a question on those games. It could change by the time those games come around, obviously, but as of right now, those should be layups for this team. And then you got to beat Michigan. You just have to. There's no two ways about that. Ryan Day knows that better than anyone in the entire country right now, and you can be 11-0. You can have the playoff in hand. You can be a title favorite. If you lose that game, this entire season is a failure. Now, you could win the title and subside that pain a little bit, but Michigan fans would still talk. They know that. The Michigan fans would still be all over Ohio State, saying they beat them 4 years in a row, and that's just the way of the world. So everyone knows it. Ryan Day knows it. They have to win that game, and if they don't, there's some very interesting conversations that might be had over there in Columbus. But overall, when we talk about Ohio State, this is the year. I feel pretty confident in saying that, not necessarily because I think they're going to be bad going forward by any means. I actually think the quarterback position is going to get better throughout the next couple of years, but the defense is never going to be quite as good as it is right now. This is definitely the best defense that Ryan Day has had during his time at Ohio State, and it's by a pretty comfortable margin. This group is going to be absolutely dominant. They are deep at pretty much every position. They are obviously scary at wide receiver and running back. The offensive line should be so much better than it was a year ago. As long as you can get good quarterback play, you'll be okay. As long as you don't have a repeat of Kyle McCord a season ago, you'll be more than fine. And I think Will Howard is capable of that, but there's still a big question, right? When you talk about big things that Ryan Day did, I think none are bigger than bringing in Chip Kelly after the Bill O'Brien thing didn't work out to call those plays, because I don't think it was the best thing for this program to have him calling plays. It's obviously been something that a lot of coaches have kind of shied away from the last couple of years, and I think it's important that you bring someone in that is as good as Chip Kelly is. I mean, it's remarkable that they were able to pull him away from being a head coach at a major university, but here we are. And Chip Kelly is going to be one of the best play design guys, and he has plenty to work with. There's no two ways about that. So I think it's going to be fascinating to watch this team. Ryan Day is one of the most fascinating people in college football right now, because you look at this season, you look at everything that's in place, you look at the pressure that's on him, and he's got to respond. And you don't really know how he's going to do it until you're thrown into the fire. But at the end of the day, this is as big of a season for a coach as we've seen in quite some time. And he's got to deliver. And a lot of things are in place for him to deliver. But at the end of the day, the biggest unknown on this team being your quarterback is not necessarily the way you want to go. But it's much better than it was a year ago, I feel. And I think, as is the case for most years, they're going to be in the hunt to win the title. They're going to be winning the Big 12, be at least in the Big 12. But this year, the way it should go, the way that they're expecting it to go, is they roll through the Big 12, or the Big 10, excuse me. Maybe suffer a loss here and there. You know, some things just happen out of random chance. So not necessarily saying they're going to go totally undefeated, but win the Big Ten, get that bye, roll to the national title game, and possibly win in dominating fashion. I know that sounds insane, but when you look at this Ohio State team, there are not many teams that have the same roster as them, that have remotely the same depth, remotely the same talent, and no one has the same desperation that this team has. So everything's on the table, as it usually is. I don't have my national title pick right now, but Ohio State might be hard to pick against once that time comes around. I will definitely be mulling that right now. I think Georgia is the team that, in my eyes at least, can rival them the best, but who knows? It's going to be fascinating to watch this unfold. I think it's really do or die time in Columbus, and if Ryan Day does not deliver this upcoming year, it could be that he's looking for a job, and that sounds insane to say, but they're bringing in a new AD that is not too afraid to spend money in Ross Bjork, so it'll be interesting to watch what happens. I think Ohio State will be fine. I think they'll actually kind of dominate this upcoming year, if I'm being totally honest, but it'll be interesting. It's as much pressure on a team as I've seen in a really, really long time. I'll put it that way, but that'll do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Tommy Brzee, as always, but your support means a lot to us. Please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference for us. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram for all of the social updates, for all of the content that we put out. We have incredible people doing work across every sport you could possibly want. So if you're not just a college football person, if you're a golf person, if you're a hockey person, if you're really into women's sports, if you're really into basketball, whatever it is, we have you covered over here at GSMC. So definitely come check out everything that we have cooking over here. But thank you once again for listening, and I will see you guys tomorrow.